Thanks.
No problem.
I've never really done that before. I'm like, stop filming.
Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3.
Hi, I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting here from the Wild and Scenic Film Fest in downtown Nevada City. And our population's like about 3,000, but when Wild and Scenic Film Fest comes, it literally quadruples. We have thousands and thousands of people that have come here from all over the world. Everyday action heroes is what I call them. We have a lot of films that are related to adventure, and especially those that are solution-oriented and looking at some of our most pressing environmental issues. We also have a lot of films around animals, because really, as humans, we should be integrated with the animal kingdom. And I learned about the pangolin in Katie's film, Pangolin, and really fascinating. The animal's adorable, probably not as much so as this knit soft one, because they're really not that soft, right, the pangolin?
No, they especially the babies, some of the edges of the scales are kind of sharp, but
so you don't want to go pet the pangolin. I wouldn't be petting the pangolin.
Yeah, you can pet it.
So tell us about the film and how you got engaged in this in the first place.
Well, Pangolin follows the journey of a single pangolin as it's taken from the wild and eventually consumed in China. And I was in the Philippines for a year for a fellowship, and I happened to be on an island called Palawan that has its own endemic species of pangolin. And as I started to ask questions, I found that the entire species was very data deficient. No one knew much about their behavior, their population baseline, and there was this rampant illegal trade of the animal out of the country over to China and Vietnam, who brings a high demand for pangolin, not only for the scales for medicinal purposes, but also for their meat as a luxury item. And so I thought that this was all very fascinating. And as I was having conversations with this organization there called the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development, or PCSD, I found out that it's kind of an incredible story how the pangolin gets from the wild to China or Vietnam, and how many times it changes hands. And so I wanted to make a story about that.
How many hands does it go through?
Well, in my story,
what's that process?
Well, it depends on which country you're talking about, but in my story, it starts in the wild in northern Palawan, sort of in the jungle, and a hunter basically goes out in the early morning with hunting dogs. And apparently, pangolin musk is aphrodisiac for dogs. So once they learn how to hunt pangolin, they never stop hunting pangolin. So, not a good thing. They haven't actually figured this out in Africa yet, so don't tell anybody. But so they bring the dogs out, and he'll probably take like his son or daughter with him to go hunting, and then when they find the pangolin's only defense is to roll up into a ball, which works really well for tigers and other predators. But for humans, it actually makes it easier just to pick them up and put them in a bag. So they bring him back, they process the animal, separate it out into meat and scales. And then basically, in my story, he gives it to his son just to put it in his school bag on the way to school. And then the son will drop it off at the trader's house, where they'll weigh everything and give cash to the kid to give to his dad. And then from there, he goes by motorcycle to a small port to give it to the smuggler, who then takes it to a larger port that gives it to a Chinese financier, who sells it to a restaurant. And then the buyer finally orders the pangolin on a menu and consumes the meat.
Is it with the smuggler because is this an endangered animal?
Yeah. All 8 species are endangered.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And in your film, is that an actual poacher that you featured in there? And how did you connect with him?
Yeah, so we could have done all the reenactments with actors, but we chose instead to kind of work with locals and at-risk communities that either were currently trading in pangolins or were now undercover informants for PCSD. And so what that provided was opportunities to have conversations with these at-risk communities about the trade and gather information, and also just to have interesting conversations about how they feel about the trade. And and that was really powerful to have some of those conversations and to learn things, in the moment during an interview. And it was important not to vilify anybody. So we don't show any faces to protect identities, but we also wanted to show that they had families and that they have lives that, and families to take care of, and they're sort of caught up in this out of, poverty. There's a lot of drivers involved, but it's sort of out of poverty and an opportunity to provide more for their family.
Since we're at Wild and Scenic, what is the wildest thing that happened to you in creating this film, Katie?
So there was a trip that we took up to northern Palawan where we thought we were meeting with an undercover informant hunter. And I guess there was a communication, lack of communication, and we arrived and it was an active poacher, and they didn't realize who we were. And if they did find out who we were, they would be very upset, because we actually found out that we were all of a sudden part of an undercover sting operation, and they were using us as like a way to basically jail this family for conducting illegal pangolin activity. So that was we were not happy with that, and we had lots of really awkward conversations, and we had to call an emergency, hey, Dad, if you don't hear from me in 3 days,
I might be in jail because of this guy.
Or I might be dead in the jungle somewhere.
Wow. Well, I mean, and so a lot of the filmmakers here take risks and take your lives into your own hands. And so that might also answer the question I asked last night about when you've had to be on the edge, since that's the theme this year, is being at the edge. When is a moment that you've been at the edge and took that leap of faith?
Well, I think it applies to that story in that we did decide to follow through and see what could come of that relationship and meet the family of poachers and try to understand them. We didn't end up finding a pangolin, so we didn't really do the whole shoot and have to worry about a lot of those things that we were worried about. But I think the bigger part of the story about being on the edge is the pangolin species and how they're not doing so great right now. And so we need to get the word out to people that pangolins exist and they're in trouble and they need all our help to basically survive this demand coming from China and Vietnam.
And where do folks go to get more information?
Yeah, so they, first of all, just, spreading the word is helpful. It's pangolin, not penguin, and they look like this, and they're in trouble. So firstly, spread the word. And secondly, if you want to get involved, you can donate to the IUCN Pangolin Group. And then you can also get involved with pangolinconservation.org. And then lastly, Panga, this little girl is about to, starting this weekend, go on a global tour to raise awareness and inspire people to get engaged with pangolin conservation.
Cool. Thanks so much, Katie, for being here. Pangolin, check it out. It's filming here at the Wild and Scenic Film Fest, or just go online to find more information as well. I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting here from the Wild and Scenic Film Fest. If you've never been, you got to come on down, connect with your people, and we'll be right back. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was great. Thanks, and thanks for being flexible.